Neo-Spartan Learning to Cope by Rory Simpson. The story you are about to experience is a work of fiction. Any resemblance to actual events, locations, or individuals living or deceased is purely coincidental. The author has used a creative license to craft a narrative intended for entertainment. Please be advised that this story contains political themes, drawing inspiration from both left and right-wing ideologies, which are portrayed in both positive and negative lights. Readers are encouraged to approach these elements with an open mind and a respectful outlook. This work seeks to represent a range of perspectives and foster thoughtful reflection on contemporary issues through a fictional lens. Chapter 33, Secrets Beneath the Surface. The following morning, Nick sat at the central island in the kitchen, flanked by Anne and James. He wore a long-sleeved dressing gown, the soft fabric a thin veil over the mottled bruises still blooming across his skin from the night before. The ache in his body was nothing compared to the turmoil in his mind. May had insisted the news stay off during breakfast, claiming the British media did nothing but crush spirits with its daily dose of misery. Instead, she had asked Apollo to play some gentle lo-fi music. And now, a mellow beat pulsed softly through the room. Its calm rhythm at odds with the storm swirling inside Nick. At the stove, May moved with quiet purpose, preparing breakfast for Connor. The rich, savoury aroma of wheat noodles mingled with the smell of sautéed chicken, onions, and finely chopped chives. Yesterday's breakfast, fluffy egg crepes, had felt like a novelty. Today's meal held a nostalgic warmth, a quiet echo of home and safety. But to Nick, that safety felt fragile, illusory. Anne and James tucked into their breakfast with the easy focus of those who were beginning to feel safe again. Nick, however, merely pushed the food around his plate, appetite absent. His thoughts replayed the footage he'd seen, Victor Hunter's final moments, each blow, each agonized scream, every bone-snapping crack was felt. It haunted him, looping endlessly behind his worn eyes. He hadn't told them, not yet. Not that Victor, May's husband, James's father, and Anne's stepfather, was dead. Not that their home was gone, reduced to rubble and ash. Not that Victor had died trying to protect them. How do you say something like that over breakfast? "You all right, Nick?" Anne asked, breaking the silence. Her tone was light, but her eyes betrayed her concern. "You look like you've seen a ghost." "Yeah," James added, casting a glance his way. "Something on your mind?" "Oh, nothing really," Nick said, managing a weak smile. "Just trying to wrap my head around how much everything's changed. A bit of a crazy way to kick off the new year." James nodded slowly. "You can say that again. If we hadn't met you, we'd probably still be stuffed into one of those grim mega flats. Cheap rent, sure, but those places are crawling with scumbags and worse." Nick chuckled, a hollow sound. What do you reckon you'd all be doing now if you went there?" Anne propped her chin on her hand, eyes drifting upward in thought. "Probably something like what Mum used to do at the bar. She always talked about opening a street food stall in the courtyard. I'd be taking orders and serving food, and James would be our muscle, making sure drunkards and thugs didn't cause trouble." James gave a crooked smile. "Given the reputation of that hellhole, we would likely need to pay off the gang that controlled the building." Mum used to say the hardest part about running a business wasn't the cooking. It was staying alive long enough to serve dinner. Nick nodded slowly, the weight of their memories pressing against his chest. They had escaped one kind of nightmare, poverty, violence, insecurity, only to walk unknowingly into the shadow of another. A darker truth still held behind his lips. This was a truth he hadn't yet found the courage to share. May finished plating Connor's breakfast and cast a glance at the digital clock mounted on the wall. The numbers blinked steadily. 7:01 a.m. Connor's probably still asleep, she remarked with quiet certainty, placing the steaming bowl of noodles down beside the others on the counter. Without hesitation, she crossed the kitchen and opened a cupboard, retrieving the cordless Hoover with a practiced hand. Nick arched an eyebrow. Do you always resort to that for late sleepers? All the time, May replied, a mischievous glint lighting her eyes. When I was a girl, living in the countryside with my grandmother, she'd wake me exactly like this, no matter how exhausted I was. We were up at dawn every day, working the fields, and she had zero patience for laziness. Now, if you'll excuse me. With that, she turned briskly and exited the kitchen, Hoover in hand, moving with the same calm authority that made even household chores seem tactical. Anne shot Nick a knowing glance and leaned back in her chair, a smile tugging at the corner of her mouth. 3, 2, 1. Right on cue, the thunderous growl of the Hoover roared from somewhere upstairs, followed swiftly by May's firm but motherly voice ringing out, Connor, breakfast is ready. Get up before I start hoovering your pillow. Moments later, the telltale sound of sluggish footsteps descended the stairs, slow, begrudging, and heavy with defeat. May returned first, cool as ever, setting the Hoover aside without a hair out of place. Behind her, Connor shuffled into the kitchen, his blue hair a tousled mess and his eyelids barely open, blinking at the room's brightness like a man emerging from hibernation. He slumped into the stool before his bowl, eyes fixed on the rising steam as if drawing strength from it. Morning, Connor, said Nick, his voice tinged with amusement. Sleep well, or did the Hoover betrayal ruin it for you? Connor groaned, rubbing his face. I wasn't expecting an ambush, he mumbled, reaching half blind for his chopsticks. Before taking a bite, he muttered politely, Itadakimasu, and then dug in with the urgency of a starving man. The moment the first mouthful touched his tongue, his eyes widened. Surprise bloomed across his face, and the next few bites disappeared in rapid succession. Bloody hell, that was incredible, he said, pushing his empty bowl forward in admiration. Thanks for the food, May. May smiled softly. Compliments were nothing new, but each one still brought a spark of joy. You're very welcome, Connor. Then, raising her voice slightly to address the whole kitchen, she added, Now, may I have your attention, please? School starts at 8 sharp. Finish your breakfast, make sure you're properly dressed, and when you're ready, come find your desk in the living room. Understood. There were murmurs of assent as May exited once more, this time to prepare for her first day as their tutor in their new home. Anne stretched with a yawn and rolled her shoulders. Come on, let's clear up. Mum's got enough to do. James and Anne took their bowls over to the sink, moving with the natural rhythm of siblings long used to helping out. Nick followed a little slower, still half lost in thought, scrubbing at his bowl with unnecessary care. The kitchen buzzed with soft movement, but inside Nick's head, everything had slowed. The others were adjusting, settling into the promise of a new routine. He, meanwhile, was still trying to make peace with truths left unspoken. And the moment he'd have to stop pretending they weren't there. As Nick finished drying his hands, Apollo's voice came crisply through the kitchen speakers, polite yet firm. "Sir, Master Stenhouse requests your presence in his office. It is an urgent matter." Nick paused mid-motion, his body tensing as if the words had reached straight through to his spine. A quiet pressure welled in his chest. He knew exactly what this was about. "Excuse me, everyone," he said, striving for a light tone that didn't quite reach his eyes. "I'd better not keep my uncle waiting. James, still scrubbing the last bit of sauce from his plate, glanced over. "We'll see you in class." "Good luck," Anne added, her voice gentle but perceptive, a small smile playing on her lips. Connor looked up from his now empty bowl, brows slightly drawn. "Hope your uncle's not angry with you," he said, genuine concern softening his usually playful tone. Nick offered a crooked smile, more reflex than feeling, as he moved towards the kitchen door. "That's what I'm worried about," he muttered, half to himself. Unease twisted in Nick's stomach, tightening with each step as he approached his uncle's office. He couldn't shake the feeling that this conversation would cut deeper than usual, particularly after what had happened with Tom Gordon, the midnight marauders, and the increasing attention Zeus was attracting. He entered quietly, locking the door behind him. His feet padded across the polished floor to the familiar creaky board near the desk. With 3 firm stamps, the mechanism whirred to life beneath him. The platform sank, shifting his surroundings in a seamless illusion. The traditional walls of the study gave way to the tranquil beauty of a Thai Buddhist temple, William Stenhouse's preferred projection space for meetings. Golden lanterns flickered gently, illuminating the polished wood floor, and incense smoke drifted like ghosts in the breeze. Seated at the centre of his ornate lotus-carved chair, William raised his whiskey tumbler to his lips. Clad in a sharp, cream-coloured robe and open-collar shirt, he radiated poise. Half monk, half mogul. "Good morning, Nick," he greeted, his voice calm but laced with gravity. "I trust the last 2 days haven't been too much trouble for you." Nick stepped forward, doing his best to mask the tension in his posture. "They've been intense," he admitted, his voice carefully neutral. "But I'm managing. I've made new friends. They're living with me now. And Connor's staying here, too. So I'm not alone." William's gaze didn't waver. "Yes, about your friend?" Nick's shoulders tensed. "It's wonderful that Connor is with you, truly," William said, pausing to swirl the whiskey in his glass. "But once again, you brought someone to my estate without informing me first. That is becoming a pattern, Nicholas." Nick stood in silence, accepting the chastisement. He could sense what was coming. William flicked 2 fingers, and a holographic screen shimmered into existence beside him. It hovered silently in the still temple air, displaying a cascade of headlines, footage, and commentary. "Zeus is on the train platform, confronting Ben Redding. Zeus is vaulting from his motorcycle onto Drifter's bonnet. Zeus escaping a chariot trap laid by Firebird and Blade. Aerial footage of Tom's arrest. Commentary from pundits, bystanders, and the ever-smirking Chief Inspector McGee. "I presume you recognise them," William said evenly. Nick swallowed, his throat dry. The headlines were mixed, but their volume spoke volumes. Zeus saves. Dozens in the midnight chase. Hero or menace. Dashcam footage reveals daring stunt over Peckham High Street. Police Chief McGee: "We didn't ask for a vigilante." Guy: "Who is Zeus? £100,000 reward for verified identity." "I was hoping you could keep a low profile as Zeus," William said, setting down his glass with a soft clink. His expression had darkened, the weight of disappointment pressing visibly into the lines of his face. "But it seems you can't help yourself when it comes to playing the hero." Nick bristled at that. He'd expected concern, maybe even criticism, but this felt like contempt. "Well, what am I supposed to do, William?" He shot back, trying to hold his temper. "Let innocent people die while I wait for a formal invitation to step in?" "You don't know these people," William snapped, suddenly rising from his chair. "If they died, it wouldn't matter. To me, or to you." "No." Nick stood his ground, defiance swelling in his chest. "It does matter. It doesn't matter if I know them personally. What matters is that they're people. They have families to go back to, people who love them, and dreams they're working towards. How can I stand by and let their stories end because someone like Tom or Leonard decides they're expendable?" William scoffed, but Nick didn't stop. "And look at you," Nick pressed on. "When Grandad Graham's War Rations factory was barely staying afloat after the Grand War, you didn't walk away. You saved it. You built Midas Industries from the ashes. You cared enough to change something. That means something, doesn't it?" The moment Nick invoked his grandfather's name, something shifted behind William's eyes. Something old and bitter. He sat back down slowly, letting out a breath, like steam escaping a pressurized valve. "My father didn't give me that factory because he believed in me," William said, his voice low and seething. "He gave it to me because he didn't believe in me. He thought it was a burden, a dead weight, a poisoned inheritance he could offload while saving face." He leaned back in his chair, gaze hardening. "He thought it would break me, that I'd fail. But I didn't. I turned it into something no one could ignore. I renamed it Midas. I bought everything going cheap after the war, and I made sure no one would ever underestimate me again." He raised the whiskey to his lips, pausing just long enough to let the next words twist like a blade. "And when the company was finally worth something, when the old bastard tried to crawl back and say he was proud, I slammed the door in his face, never spoke to him again." Nick was silent for a moment. The bitterness in William's voice wasn't just cold, it was volcanic, molten, still burning after all these years. "Wow," Nick said quietly, blinking. "You really hated your dad." William turned to him, eyes glinting like cut steel. "And so I should. Every idea I ever pitched, every strategy, every cost-saving change, he binned them because it would affect his bottom line. He thought small, I thought, legacy. He took another slow drink, letting the burn remind him that he was still in control. A few moments passed. Then William, whose voice was calmer now, refocused on the matter at hand. But anyway, he said, adjusting his cuffs, we were talking about you, your recklessness, your need to make yourself invisible. Nick met his uncle's gaze, no longer intimidated. William pointed at the glowing headlines showing Zeus in action, his expression growing increasingly grim. For starters, the suit's design was meant to remain classified. It was never supposed to appear in public records. And for the record, Midas didn't design that armor. Nick raised an eyebrow. Do you remember when I told you I'd been buying up assets after I took over as CEO? William leaned back in his chair, his tone shifting into lecture mode. One of those assets was a German arms manufacturer called Kraft Rüstung AG. They specialized in experimental nanolinker armor, cutting-edge stuff. When I acquired them, one of the conditions was that their designs remain strictly confidential. No photos, no replication, no leaks. That includes what you're wearing. Nick frowned. Isn't there some device that can erase footage, something that can wipe any camera that films me? There is, William replied with a nod. A Spectra blank. It scrambles any nearby recording, live or stored within a 30-meter radius, standard issue for Spectracraft's field agents. Nick's eyes lit up. Can I get one? William was already tapping on his holographic keypad. I've just ordered one. I'll have it sent to Captain Rhodes. She'll hand it over when you next meet. Normally there's a 2-week vetting process, but since I own the company, I've authorized it myself. Thanks, Nick said, a flicker of gratitude in his voice. I'm not sure when I'll see her again, though. You won't be waiting long, William replied. She reported that Black Death agents have infiltrated London. Worse still, there are rumours that Cormac Maguire is in the city. Nick blinked. The Irish bomber? The one who despises the imperial family and blows up anything he doesn't like? The very same, William said grimly. If he's working with the Black Death now, then things are going to escalate quickly. Nick clenched his fists. Good. If I find him, I'll make him tell me where Thanatos is hiding. Not so fast, William warned, his tone sharp. Cormac isn't some hot-headed street thug. If Thanatos recruited him, it means he's a serious threat. Do you remember what happened with Leonard? He gestured toward a series of surveillance clips showing Zeus's brutal battle against Leonard. Though Nick had technically won, the footage made it clear that the margin for error had been razor thin. You need training, serious training, from someone who's fought these people before, William continued. Gina Rhodes survived the Grand War. She knows what you're up against. These men, Leonard, Cormac, and Thanatos, are products of that war. They've got no place in a peaceful world. Violence is all they know, and they'll burn the world down just to keep fighting. Nick nodded, his voice steady with resolve. Then I'll learn everything I can from her. I nearly died in that fight with Ben. I can't afford to be that reckless again. William gave a short nod of approval. Good, you're learning. Now, Apollo tells me you've got school today with May. Enjoy that. She may be tougher on you than the terrorists. The scenery around Nick shifted. The serene digital projection of the Thai jungle fading away as the hidden platform lowered him back into the study. Taking a deep breath, Nick stepped out of the office. There was work to be done, lessons to endure, and enemies to prepare for. He wasn't just a teenager anymore. He was Zeus, and the real war was only just beginning.